Hello and welcome. Today we're going to look at interference of waves. So for this one I'm going to use light directly. We could see the light much better than we can see water or sound waves. So I'm going to use a screen immediately, okay, and that would be the effect of just a point source making a circular wave. And we can see, wait, I don't want to do this, I want to put the intensity there. We see the intensity is basically the same everywhere. The moment I start making a second source, we see some weird things here in the middle. We see that the waves are actually interfering with one another. So we see that the crests of this wave and the crest of this wave comes together, and the troughs and the troughs, and they form a line where we can actually see maximum crests and maximum troughs. And we call that constructive interference. But then we see these lines over here where there's no movement. That is where a crest meets a trough or a trough meets a crest, and we have what we call destructive interference. Okay, and we can see that with the color. So two lights are shining and it produces darkness amongst other strips. Okay, so if we pause now, okay, and we look at the following, I'm just gonna restart. So if I go slow here and I pause, okay, so what we see, where do we see constructive interference and destructive interference? Okay, so the green is a crest, the black is a trough. Okay, so we see here a trough meeting a crest, and then there's nothing. Okay, but this is a trough that meets a trough, crest that meets a crest, trough that meets a trough, but there is some lines where there is no movement. Okay, so where crests meets crests, okay, that's every half wavelength. Okay, we know half a wavelength, pi or 180 degrees or pi. So every half wavelength where this crest and that crest meet, okay, we will have constructive interference. So if crest one of this one, okay, so we can see different lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, if we see how they interact, there's a crest with a trough, okay, and they would form constructive interference, or destructive interference. Now we see this is now the second crest, trough, crest. Okay, second crest meeting second crest, and that creates constructive interference. Okay, and there we see the constructive interference. Then we see trough meeting crest, destructive interference. Okay, and then we see crest meeting crest, trough meeting trough, constructive interference. So what we see if we move on, that every half a wavelength is constructive interference, and every odd half wavelength is destructive interference. So when a crest meets a trough, destructive, and when a crest meets a crest, constructive interference. Okay, I hope that makes a bit more sense. So if we look at it, we put the screen back again. Okay, what do we notice? We see these bright patches. Okay, now I can now look at the different colors. We said that when we're using a higher, well, lower frequency, okay, is bigger wavelengths. What we see now, we see, and we're going to use the intensity calculator, we see 1, 2, 3, and on the sides 3, 4, 5 purple lines, okay, fringes, we call them fringes. If we compare blue, And let's go at normal speed. We see only 3. If we go to light blue, we still see 3, but we see that there's less and less dark on the side. Okay, now we still see 3, but we see that we're basically not seeing the dark bands on the side anymore. Let's go to red then. Okay, so we can see that it's definitely shifting, spreading out. Okay, the higher the frequency, lower wavelength, bigger diffraction. Okay, and here's our biggest wavelength, and we can see that we can't even see the crests on the sides. Okay, so this is the constructive and destructive interference, how objects interact with each other.